The great council chamber stretched across 300 meters of polished crystal floors. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated seats, each area designed for their specific biology. The Vraxel needed heat lamps. The creche required moisture generators. The Lumini existed as pure crystalline consciousness, their bodies glowing softly in their suspension fields. Ambassador Kenji Torres stood at the speaking platform, his dark suit simple compared to the elaborate garments worn by other delegates. He was a small figure in this massive room, but his voice carried clearly through the translation devices. Honored members of the Galactic Coalition, Kenji began, humanity requests full membership in this council. We have met every requirement. Our technology meets minimum standards. Our worlds are stable. Our people seek peace. A rasping laugh echoed from the Vraxel section. Commander Zorthak rose from his heated seat, his scaled body reflecting the chamber's lights. He was easily 3 meters tall, his reptilian features twisted into what his species considered a smile. Peace? Zorthak hissed. Your kind disappeared for 200 years after first contact. The silence, we call it. You ignored all communication. You hid in your little star system like frightened children. Now you return and ask to sit among real civilizations? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The creche delegate clicked her mandibles in what translated as laughter. Even the normally diplomatic Lumini dimmed their lights, showing disapproval. Kenji remained calm. He had expected this. We needed time to develop, to grow as a species. Surely the Council understands that different cultures advance at different speeds. Develop? Another voice joined in. This came from Wexlor, a creche military advisor. You barely have functional jump drives. Your largest warship is smaller than our transport vessels. What could you possibly offer this coalition? Kenji glanced at the other 2 human delegates sitting behind him. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo met his eyes and gave the smallest shake of her head. Not yet. Colonel Marcus Webb sat motionless, his military bearing perfect, his face unreadable. We offer our perspective, Kenji said carefully. Our innovation. Our determination. Zorthak laughed again, louder this time. Determination? That reminds me of an old story my grandfather told me. During the silence, the Vraxel Empire sent a scouting fleet to your home system. 12 ships, nothing major. Just a routine investigation to see what you primitives were doing. The commander paced now, enjoying his audience. The fleet never returned. All 12 ships gone. My grandfather claimed they encountered something. A human vessel, he said. 1 ship against 12. He called it the Leviathan, a ghost ship from human mythology. More laughter filled the chamber. Zorthak spread his clawed hands. Of course this was nonsense. Space pirates probably ambushed them, or they encountered a natural phenomenon. But my grandfather insisted until his death that humans had destroyed them. 1 ship, 1. He turned to face Kenji directly. Tell me, Ambassador, do you have such a vessel? This mythical Leviathan? The entire chamber fell silent. Every species watched the human delegation. Kenji's expression never changed. The silence was a complicated time, Commander. Many things happened that are not well documented. A politician's answer, Zorthak sneered. Which means no. You hide behind words because you have nothing else. Kenji sat down. The vote would happen in 3 days. He already knew the result. Humanity would be denied membership. The coalition saw them as weak, primitive, irrelevant. As the session ended and delegates filed out, Dr. Okonkwo leaned close to Kenji. They don't know, she whispered. They don't need to know, Kenji replied quietly. Not unless it becomes necessary, Colonel Webb added in a voice barely audible. The question is, will it become necessary? Far across the galaxy, that question was being answered. The Korthax Empire occupied a region of space that made other species nervous. They had conquered 12 civilizations in the past century. Their methods were brutal and efficient. Surrender or die. Those who surrendered lived as slaves. Those who resisted were exterminated. War Sovereign Kralik stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Endless Hunger. Behind him, through the massive view screens, stretched his Crimson Armada, 1,200 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. The sight filled him with pride. Analysis complete, my sovereign, his tactical officer reported. The human colonies are poorly defended. Intelligence shows approximately 200 vessels total across all their worlds. Most are outdated designs. Kralik studied the holographic display. The human territories were small but rich in resources, rare minerals, habitable worlds, and they sat on the edge of Coalition space, which made them strategically valuable. The Coalition protects them? He asked. Technically, yes, but humans are not full members. Our diplomatic sources say the Council views them with contempt. They will not risk war with the Korthax Empire for a species they barely tolerate. Kralix's mouth parts twisted into a savage smile. Then we take what we want. Prepare the fleet for invasion. Send the standard ultimatum to all human worlds. They have 72 hours to surrender. And if they resist? Then we demonstrate what happens to primitives who defy the Empire. The message was sent. Across human space on Earth, on the colonies of New Horizon, Terra Nova and Kepler's Hope, the ultimatum was received. Surrender all territory and resources to the Korthax Empire. Submit to Imperial rule. Resistance would result in total destruction. In the Coalition Council, an emergency session was called. The mood was tense but not panicked. The general consensus formed quickly. Humanity was not worth a war with the Korthax. Perhaps this would teach the humans humility. Perhaps after losing their colonies, they would be more grateful for whatever scraps of protection the Coalition might offer. Kenji Torres requested to speak. Permission was granted, though several delegates made their impatience obvious. The Korthax have threatened human worlds, Kenji said. We acknowledge that humanity is not yet a full Coalition member. Therefore, we do not ask for your protection. We decline to put any other species at risk for our sake. This caused confusion. Wexler the Kresh clicked in surprise. You accept conquest? You will not even fight? I did not say that, Kenji replied. A small smile crossed his face. I said we will not ask for your help. Humanity will defend its own worlds. Zorthak could not contain himself. With what? Your 200 obsolete ships against the Crimson Armada. This is suicide. Kenji gathered his materials. Dr. Okonkwo and Colonel Webb stood with him. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Kenji turned back one last time. Commander Zorthak, you mentioned your grandfather's story. The one about the Leviathan. You called it a myth. Because it is a myth, Zorthak snapped. Kenji's smile widened slightly. Perhaps. Or perhaps some myths exist because people need to explain things they cannot understand. Thank you for your time, honored delegates. Humanity withdraws its petition for membership. We will handle our own affairs. As the human delegation left, a coded message was transmitted from Earth to every human colony and station. It was brief, just 3 words in old military code. Protocol Omega. Activate. On Neptune's orbit, in a fold of space that existed between dimensions, something began to stir. Systems that had slept for 2 centuries started to wake. Power cores that held more energy than most stars began to charge. And in 300 cryogenic pods, human hearts began to beat again. The myth was waking up. The 72-hour deadline passed like a storm approaching on the horizon. Across human space, civilians were evacuated from frontier stations. Military vessels, old and outdated by galactic standards, formed defensive positions around key worlds. Everyone knew these defenses would not be enough. But humans would fight anyway. On Earth, in the deep archives beneath Geneva, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo walked through corridors that few people knew existed. Her security clearance was among the highest in human space. Colonel Marcus Webb walked beside her, his face grim. The Council thinks we're fools, Marcus said. Let them think that, Sarah replied. Better they underestimate us than fear us before it's necessary. They entered a circular room. The walls were covered in displays showing data streams, historical records, and classified files. This was the Archive of the Silence, the complete record of what humanity had really been doing for 200 years. Sarah pulled up a hologram. It showed a star map from 230 years ago, back when humanity had just developed their first crude, faster-than-light drives. A small exploration ship called the Pathfinder had been surveying the outer edges of the Kuiper Belt. This is where it started, she said. The Pathfinder detected an anomaly, something that shouldn't exist. The hologram shifted, showing a structure floating in deep space. It was enormous, easily 100 kilometers across, shaped like a ring with geometric patterns that hurt to look at for too long. The architecture followed rules that did not match 3-dimensional space. The architects, Marcus said quietly. The old ones. Every spacefaring species knows the legends, Sarah continued. A civilization that existed millions of years ago. They built things that transcended normal physics. Then they disappeared and their technology was lost. Finding even a fragment of their work is considered impossible. But we found more than a fragment. The hologram showed the exploration that followed. Humanity had immediately classified the discovery at the highest level. They stopped answering coalition communications. They pulled back to their home system. The galaxy called it the silence and assumed humans were either too afraid or too primitive to engage. The truth was different. Humanity had found a gift from the ancient past and they were terrified of it. 3 research stations were built around the structure, Sarah explained. Thousands of our best scientists studied it. We learned that the architects didn't just build advanced technology. They understood the fundamental nature of reality. They could manipulate space, time, gravity, even probability. Marcus pulled up another file, and we found blueprints. Partial ones. Enough to understand that the architects built ships, vessels that were as much alive as they were machines. That's when the debate started, Sarah said. What should we do with this knowledge? We could build weapons. We could conquer the galaxy. The technology we found could make humanity unstoppable. But we didn't, Marcus finished. We chose differently. The decision had taken 10 years. Philosophers, ethicists, scientists, military leaders, and civilian representatives debated humanity's path. Some wanted to build a fleet of architect ships and establish human dominance. Others wanted to destroy everything and pretend the discovery never happened. The compromise became known as the Guardian Protocol. Humanity would build one ship, only one. It would incorporate the best of human engineering with the architect technology they could understand. It would be powerful enough to defend humanity against any threat, but limited enough that it could not be used for conquest. The Leviathan, Marcus said. We spent 60 years building it. Another 40 testing it in deep space. It only saw combat once, Sarah nodded. When the Vraxel scouts came during the silence, they interpreted our isolation as weakness and sent ships to investigate. The Leviathan intercepted them. 12 ships destroyed in 17 minutes, Marcus recalled. But we didn't want anyone to know what we had. So we let them think it was pirates or an accident or whatever explanation they preferred. And when the Leviathan was complete, when we knew it worked, we made a choice. Sarah's voice was heavy. We put it in dimensional storage. We put the crew in cryosleep. We hid it near Neptune where no one would look. And we waited. Waited for what? For this, Sarah said simply. For the moment when we would need it. When defense was necessary, not conquest. When we could use the power responsibly. An alert chimed. Both of them looked at the displays. The Korthax Crimson Armada had entered human space. War Sovereign Kralix watched his tactical displays with satisfaction. The human defense fleet had assembled near the colony world of New Horizon. 200 ships, just as intelligence predicted. They were arranged in textbook defensive formations, trying to maximize their limited firepower. Pathetic, he muttered. They cannot win, yet they position themselves as if strategy matters. His tactical officer was less certain. The humans have a reputation for unpredictability, my sovereign. Perhaps caution would be wise. Caution? Kralix's voice rose. Against primitives? No. We will crush them quickly and move on to their other worlds. Send the vanguard. 400 ships. That should be more than sufficient. The Korthax vanguard advanced. They outnumbered the human defenders 2-1. Their weapons were more powerful. Their shields were stronger. Their tactics had conquered 12 civilizations. The battle lasted 6 hours. The humans fought with desperate courage. Their smaller ships used kamikaze runs, ramming maneuvers, and guerrilla tactics. They made the Korthax pay for every meter of space. But courage could not overcome the technology gap. By the time the battle ended, 140 human ships were destroyed. The remaining 60 retreated toward New Horizons' orbital stations, shields failing, weapons depleted. Kralix allowed himself a moment of triumph. That is the price of resistance. Now we finish them. But his tactical officer suddenly spoke, his voice urgent. My sovereign, we are receiving a transmission. From Earth. Another plea for mercy? Kralix sneered. Ignore it. No, my sovereign. It is a warning. They say they are activating something called Protocol Omega. Kralix waved a dismissive claw. Meaningless human dramatics. Continue the advance. Across the galaxy in the Coalition Council chamber, the same transmission was received. Ambassador Kenji Torres appeared on every screen, his face calm but his voice carrying an edge that few had heard before. This message is for all Coalition species and for the Korthax Empire. Humanity has attempted peace. We have attempted diplomacy. We have shown restraint. These approaches have failed. He paused, letting his words sink in. 200 years ago, humanity found something in deep space. We found technology left by the architects, the old ones who came before all current civilizations. We could have used it to conquer. We could have built a fleet and dominated the galaxy. We chose a different path. Zorthak stood in the council chamber, his eyes wide. Impossible. The architect sites are all dead, stripped clean millions of years ago. We built one ship, Kenji continued, one vessel incorporating both human ingenuity and architect technology. We built it as a guardian, not a conqueror. We hoped we would never need to use it. But the Korthax have forced our hand. The transmission showed coordinates. Neptune orbit. Sensor data began flooding in from Coalition monitoring stations. Something was happening there. Something that made every species scientist start shouting in disbelief. Protocol Omega is now active, Kenji said. The Leviathan is waking up. To the Korthax Empire, you have one chance to withdraw. If you refuse, you will discover why some myths are based on truth. The transmission ended. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. Species representatives argued, demanded explanations, accused humans of lying. But the sensor data did not lie. Near Neptune, a tear was opening in space itself. Energy readings spiked beyond any known measurement, and something vast was coming through. Something that should not exist. Something that proved humans had been very, very quiet about what they could really do. The myth was no longer sleeping. Captain Sarah Chen woke from a sleep that had lasted 200 years. The cryogenic pod hissed as it opened, releasing vapor into the dim chamber. Her body felt strange, different, enhanced by the integration process that had been necessary to pilot the Leviathan. Her nervous system had been modified to interface directly with the ship's consciousness, because the Leviathan was not just a ship. It was alive in ways that current science could not fully explain. Sarah sat up slowly, her enhanced physiology already compensating for 2 centuries of frozen sleep. Around her, other pods were opening. Her crew of 300, all volunteers, all modified, all ready for a mission they hoped would never come. Status, she said, her voice activating the ship's systems. A presence filled her mind, not thoughts exactly, but awareness. The Leviathan was speaking to her through their neural link. Images flooded her consciousness. The Korthax invasion, the destroyed human defense fleet, the colony world of New Horizon, 2 billion people now in immediate danger. So it's time, Sarah whispered. She had known this day might come. She had volunteered for cryo-sleep with that knowledge, but hoping something would not happen and accepting that it had were different things. Her first officer, Commander James Park, appeared beside her. He was already fully awake, his own modifications allowing him to interface with the ship's tactical systems. The crew is waking, Captain. All systems are coming online. We're still in dimensional storage, but the fold is destabilizing. We'll be in normal space in approximately 4 minutes. Get me a clear picture of the situation, Sarah ordered. And wake up, everyone. Full combat stations. Throughout the Leviathan, 300 people moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for 40 years before going into cryosleep. Every drill, every simulation, every possible scenario had been explored. They were not just a crew. They were the guardians humanity had chosen. The ship itself was 15 kilometers long, shaped like nothing else in the galaxy. Its hull seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of view, as if it existed partially in other dimensions. The architecture followed patterns that the architects had used. Geometric designs that incorporated mathematics beyond standard 3-dimensional understanding. Human sections were clearly visible, practical, and functional engineering. But these were integrated with structures that seemed organic, alive, flowing, armor plating that could regenerate, power conduits that pulsed like veins, weapon systems that did not just fire energy but manipulated the fundamental forces of reality. Sarah made her way to the bridge, a circular chamber at the heart of the ship. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing data streams in formats that only enhanced humans could fully process. Her crew took their stations, each one linking their consciousness to their respective systems. All stations report ready, Commander Park announced. Sarah settled into the command chair. It was not really a chair. It was an interface point, a place where she could become one with the Leviathan. Neural connections activated, and suddenly she could feel the ship's vast consciousness merge with her own. It was overwhelming and beautiful. She could feel every system, every sensor, every particle of the ship's being. And more than that, she could feel its purpose. The architects had built this technology for exploration, for understanding, for pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Humans had adapted it for protection. "Take us out," Sarah commanded. New horizon, maximum speed. The Leviathan did not move in the conventional sense. It folded space. One moment it existed in its dimensional pocket near Neptune. The next moment it was simply somewhere else. The transition was instantaneous from an outside perspective. But Sarah experienced it as a journey through layers of reality that normal physics could not describe. They emerged in the New Horizon system, and immediately every sensor in the region went insane. War Sovereign Kralix was preparing for the final assault when his tactical officer screamed. Not spoke urgently, not reported with concern, but actually screamed in primal terror. "What is it?" Kralix demanded. "Energy signature, my sovereign. It just appeared. Readings are off every scale. It's impossible. The sensors say it's 15 kilometers long, but mass readings indicate it's heavier than a small moon. Gravitational distortions are warping space around it. What is that thing?" On every display screen, the Leviathan appeared. Kralix stared at it, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. It was beautiful and terrifying. Its hull seemed to shimmer with inner light. Patterns moved across its surface like living things, and it radiated power, incredible power. Power that made his entire armada seem like children's toys. "Is that a ship?" he whispered. Across the coalition, every species with sensors in the region received the same data. In the council chamber, absolute silence fell as the readings were analyzed. The Lumini Elder was the first to speak, her crystalline body pulsing with agitation. "That energy signature, it matches records from the First Age. The architects, the old ones, but that is impossible. Their technology has been dead for millions of years." Zorthak's voice was barely a whisper. "The Leviathan. My grandfather's story. It was true. It was all true." On the Leviathan's bridge, Sarah surveyed the battlefield. The Korthax Armada was massive, over 1,000 ships arranged in attack formations. The remaining human defenders were falling back, their shields failing, their weapons nearly depleted. And New Horizon hung in space beyond them, helpless. "Open a channel," Sarah ordered. "All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this." The communication systems activated. They did not use normal radio waves or quantum entanglement. They used something more fundamental, broadcasting directly through the fabric of space itself. Every ship in the system, every station, every coalition monitoring post across the galaxy received her words. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Terran exploration vessel Leviathan. To the Korthax forces, you are ordered to power down your weapons and withdraw from human space immediately. This is your only warning." Kralix recovered from his shock. He was a conqueror, a warrior who had destroyed civilizations. He would not be intimidated by one ship, no matter how strange it looked. "One vessel against my armada. Human arrogance knows no limits. All ships open fire. Destroy that thing." Sarah felt his decision through the sensor nets before the orders were even transmitted. She sighed. "They chose violence. Tactical, you are authorized to engage. Defensive protocols only. Disable, do not destroy when possible." "Understood, Captain," Commander Park replied. "Engaging." The Korthax Armada opened fire. Thousands of weapons discharged simultaneously. Plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid fields, antimatter missiles that could crack planets, quantum disruptors that could tear apart molecular bonds, enough firepower to sterilize a solar system. All of it struck the Leviathan's shields, and none of it penetrated. The energy simply dissipated, absorbed and redirected by defensive systems that operated on principles current science could not explain. The ship did not even shake. The shields did not even flicker. Sarah felt the weapons fire through her connection to the ship. It felt like raindrops on her skin, gentle and meaningless. "Return fire," she said quietly. "Demonstrate capability." The Leviathan did not have traditional weapons. It had systems that manipulated reality itself. Commander Park selected targets carefully, prioritizing the closest threats. 5 Korthax battlecruisers suddenly found themselves caught in gravitational fields that should not exist. Space warped around them, crushing their hulls like paper. They did not explode. They simply compacted into dense spheres of wreckage. 10 more ships tried to retreat. The Leviathan flickered, moving through quantum space, and appeared directly behind them. It did not fire weapons. It simply created a localized distortion that folded the ships through higher dimensions. They emerged seconds later, millions of kilometers away, their navigation systems completely scrambled, their weapons offline. 20 more ships attacked in a coordinated strike. The Leviathan responded by generating a pulse that traveled through space faster than light. Where it touched the Korthax vessels, their power systems simply stopped. Reactors went cold, shields collapsed, life support switched to emergency batteries. 4 minutes after the battle started, 300 Korthax ships were destroyed or disabled. The Leviathan had not even moved from its initial position. It had not used even a fraction of its capabilities, and across the galaxy, every species watched and understood. The humans had not been hiding because they were weak. They had been hiding because they were terrifyingly strong. War Sovereign Kralix watched his armada die, and for the first time in his life he knew true fear. 300 of his ships had been destroyed or disabled in minutes. Not hours, not even half an hour, minutes, and the human vessel had barely moved. "All ships, full retreat," he shouted. "Emergency jump now." His tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. "We cannot, my sovereign. That ship, it is doing something to space itself. Our jump drives will not engage. We are trapped." Kralix stared at the tactical display. His remaining 900 ships were attempting to flee in every direction, but none of them could activate their faster-than-light systems. The Leviathan had created some kind of field, some distortion that prevented dimensional jumps. They were locked in normal space with a predator that could destroy them at will. "Then we fight," Kralix snarled. "All ships concentrate fire on that vessel." "Everything we have," the Armada responded. Every weapon, every missile, every form of destructive power the Korthax possessed was unleashed in a desperate assault. The space around the Leviathan lit up like a new star being born. Energy levels climbed so high that ships on the outer edge of the battlefield had to raise their shields just to avoid the radiation. But when the light faded, the Leviathan hung in space exactly as before, undamaged, unharmed, untouched. On the bridge, Sarah watched the tactical displays with a mixture of pity and disappointment. She had hoped the Korthax would choose wisdom. They had chosen desperation instead. "Captain," Commander Park said quietly, "they are preparing something. Energy readings from the flagship are spiking. It looks like a planet-killer weapon." Sarah's enhanced senses confirmed it. The endless hunger was charging a weapon designed to crack worlds, to boil atmospheres, to extinguish all life on a planet's surface. And it was not aimed at the Leviathan, it was aimed at New Horizon. "They would rather commit genocide than admit defeat," she said, her voice cold. "Tactical, intercept that weapon. Engineering, prepare for energy absorption." "Captain, that is a planet killer," her chief engineer warned. "Even our shields might not handle the full impact." Sarah's eyes hardened. "We are not going to shield against it. We are going to eat it." The planet killer fired. A beam of concentrated antimatter and exotic particles lanced toward New Horizon, carrying enough energy to sterilize the colony world in seconds. 2 billion people were about to die. The Leviathan moved, not through normal space, but through the dimensions that lay between. One moment it was kilometers away from the beam's path. The next moment it was directly in front of it, placing itself between the weapon and the planet. The beam struck the Leviathan and disappeared. The ship's architect-designed systems did not just block the energy. They absorbed it, channeled it, transformed it. Sarah felt the weapon's power flow through the ship's systems like a river finding new channels. It was incredible, terrifying, beautiful. "Energy absorbed," her chief engineer reported, his voice filled with awe. "We just took in enough power to destroy a world, and our systems are treating it like a battery charge." "Captain, we are now operating at 140% reactor capacity." "Good," Sarah said. "Let's use it." "Tactical, I want a hyperspace pulse. Target every Korthax weapon system and faster-than-light drive in this system. Disable them all. Simultaneously." Commander Park's fingers danced across his interface, his mind linked directly to the Leviathan's tactical consciousness. "Pulse prepared, Captain. This will use all the energy we just absorbed, plus 30% of our core reserves." Fire. The Leviathan did not emit a visible beam or projectile. Instead, it released a wave of directed energy that traveled through hyperspace, touching every Korthax ship in the system at exactly the same instant. The wave was carefully calibrated, surgical in its precision. Weapon systems overloaded and shut down. Faster-than-light drives burned out their core components. Shield generators fused into useless metal, but life support remained functional. Crew quarters stayed pressurized. Medical bays continued operating. The Korthak soldiers would live, but their ships were now nothing more than drifting hulks. 900 warships disabled in a single pulse. The entire Crimson Armada, the terror of 12 conquered civilizations, rendered helpless by one vessel in one attack. Sarah opened a channel directly to the endless hunger. War Sovereign Kralix, your weapons are offline. Your drives are destroyed. Your fleet is disabled. You tried to kill 2 billion civilians rather than accept that you were outmatched. That says everything about your empire and nothing good about your honor. On his bridge, Kralix slumped in his command throne. Around him, his crew sat in shocked silence. Every screen showed disabled ships, failed systems, and armada that had been reduced to space debris without even being destroyed. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am a guardian," Sarah replied. 200 years ago, humanity found something in space. Technology from a civilization that existed before any of us. We could have used it to conquer the galaxy. We chose to use it to protect instead. We built one ship, only one. We hoped we would never need it. You forced our hand. She paused, letting her words sink in. You came to our worlds threatening genocide. You attacked our colonies. You fired a planet killer at civilians. By every law of war, we would be justified in destroying your entire fleet and everyone in it. Kralix felt a chill. He had expected annihilation. Every species he had conquered, he had crushed completely. He assumed humans would do the same.
Then do it.
Finish what you started. No, Sarah said simply. We built the Leviathan as a defender, not an executioner. Your ships are disabled, but your people live. Your crews have enough life support to survive until rescue ships arrive. You will return to your empire. You would let us go? Kralix could not comprehend it. After everything we did? Yes, because we are not you. We do not conquer. We do not exterminate. We protect. But understand this, War Sovereign. Return to your empire and tell them what happened here. Tell them humanity has a guardian. Tell them we have the power to destroy any threat, but we choose mercy when possible. Tell them that if they threaten innocence, if they attack the weak, if they practice genocide, the Leviathan will answer. Sarah's voice became harder, colder. And tell them that next time, if you force our hand again, we will not be so gentle. This is the only warning your empire will receive. Leave our space. Leave Coalition space. If we hear of you attacking any civilization, we will come. And we will stop you permanently. The channel closed. Kralix sat in silence, staring at the tactical displays showing his ruined armada. He had conquered 12 civilizations. He had destroyed countless fleets. He had considered himself invincible. One human ship had made him understand how wrong he had been. Across the galaxy, in the Coalition Council chamber, representatives watched the battle's conclusion in stunned silence. The sensor data was undeniable. The results were impossible to dismiss. Humanity had hidden power beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. The Lumini Elder spoke first, her crystalline voice resonating through the chamber. The architect's technology was thought to be lost, dead, gone forever. Yet humans found it, mastered it, and chose restraint. They built one ship, not a fleet. They offered peace first, violence only when necessary. Zorthak stood slowly. The Vraxil commander who had mocked humanity days before now looked shaken. My grandfather was right. The Leviathan destroyed our scouts 200 years ago, and we called it a myth because we could not accept that primitives had such power. They are not primitives, Wexler of the Kresh said quietly. They never were. They were students learning to use responsibly what they had found. While we dismissed them, they were growing into something far beyond us. Ambassador Kenji Torres appeared on the main display, his transmission coming from Earth. Honored representatives, humanity did not share our discovery because we knew what it would create. Fear, jealousy, calls for us to share technology we barely understood ourselves, or worse, demands that we use it to enforce peace throughout the galaxy. He smiled sadly. We did not want to be conquerors or overlords. We wanted to be partners, equals, but you made it clear humans were not welcome as equals. So we prepared to defend ourselves and hoped the preparation would never be necessary. The Korthaks made it necessary, Kenji continued. They forced us to reveal what we had hoped to keep hidden. Now the galaxy knows. Humanity has a guardian. We have the power to enforce peace. The question is, what do we do with that knowledge? The council chamber erupted in debate. Some species wanted humanity punished for hiding such power. Others demanded the technology be shared. Still others argued humanity should be made coalition leaders by default, since they clearly had superior capabilities. Kenji waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke again. Humanity makes this offer. The Leviathan will serve as a defender, not just for human worlds, but for any species that faces extinction or genocide. We will not interfere in normal conflicts. We will not choose sides in political disputes. But if another empire like the Korthax rises, if innocents face extermination, if a civilization attacks the defenseless, we will respond. In exchange, we ask for nothing. No territory, no tribute, no command over other species. We simply ask to be left alone to continue growing, learning, and existing peacefully. The Leviathan will sleep again, and hopefully for a long time. But it will. 3 days after the battle, rescue ships from the Korthax Empire arrived at New Horizon. They found their Crimson Armada floating helplessly in space, alive but defeated. The rescue operation took weeks. Every disabled ship had to be towed back to Korthax space, a humiliating parade of failure. War Sovereign Kralix returned to his homeworld in shame. He was stripped of his rank and brought before the Imperial Council. They demanded answers. How could the mighty Crimson Armada be destroyed by a single ship? Kralix told them everything. The Leviathan, the architect technology, the weapon that absorbed a planet killer and turned it into power, the precision strike that disabled 900 warships simultaneously, the humans who could have destroyed them all but chose mercy instead. The Imperial Council did not believe him at first. They thought he was making excuses for his failure, but then the sensor data came in, confirmed by dozens of coalition monitoring stations. The evidence was undeniable. The Korthax Empire, which had built its power on conquest and intimidation, suddenly faced an enemy it could not defeat. An enemy that did not even want to fight, but would utterly destroy them if they tried conquest again. The Empire withdrew. They pulled back from coalition space, from human territory, from the borders of every civilization they had threatened. For the first time in a century, the Korthax chose peace, not because they wanted to, but because they had learned the price of war with humanity. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the Leviathan's bridge, watching the last Korthax rescue ship jump to hyperspace. New Horizon hung in the viewport beyond, safe and whole. 2 billion people who had been hours from death now went about their lives, most of them never knowing how close extinction had come. Mission accomplished, Captain, Commander Park said. All threats neutralized. Colony world secure. Coalition representatives are requesting permission to board and inspect the ship. Sarah smiled slightly. Denied. The Leviathan is humanity's secret, not a museum piece. Tell them we appreciate the interest, but some things need to remain mysteries. She had known this would happen. Every species in the galaxy now wanted to understand the Leviathan, how it worked, what made it possible, whether it could be replicated. The requests for information were already flooding in, but humanity's answer was consistent. No. The architect technology was not something to be shared casually. It was too powerful, too dangerous in the wrong hands. Humanity had spent 200 years learning to use it responsibly. They would not give that power to species who had barely learned to avoid destroying themselves. New orders from Earth Command, Commander Park said, reading his display. We are to return to dimensional storage. Resume cryosleep protocols. Return to standby status, Sarah nodded. She had expected this too. The Leviathan was not meant to be active permanently. It was a guardian, not a patrol ship. It would sleep again, waiting for the next crisis that required its intervention. Send a message to all human colonies, she ordered. Tell them we are going back to sleep. Tell them we hope it will be a long sleep, one that lasts centuries. But tell them we will always be here, watching, waiting, ready. Over the next week, the Leviathan prepared to return to its dimensional fold. The crew underwent medical checks, system diagnostics, psychological evaluations. Returning to cryosleep after tasting action was harder than going under the first time. But they were professionals. They had accepted this duty 200 years ago, and they would accept it now. Sarah recorded her final log entry before entering cryosleep. Captain's log, final entry of this activation cycle. We have successfully defended human colonies from the Korthax Empire. Enemy forces defeated with minimal casualties. Coalition status upgraded to full membership with defensive guarantees. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I want to address future crews who may listen to this recording. We built the Leviathan from architect technology, but we built it with human purpose. We chose to create a defender, not a destroyer. We chose mercy over vengeance. We chose protection over conquest. These choices matter. The galaxy will always have threats. Empires that seek dominance, species that practice genocide, forces that prey on the weak. But how we respond to these threats defines us. We could use the Leviathan's power to rule. We could force peace at the point of our weapons. We could become tyrants with noble intentions. Sarah's voice became firmer. We must never do that. We must always remember that power without wisdom is just another form of tyranny. We defend those who cannot defend themselves. We stop genocides and extinctions. But we do not enforce our will on others. We do not choose their governments or dictate their cultures. We protect, we do not rule. To future captains, use this ship wisely. Use it sparingly. Use it only when defense is truly necessary. And always remember that the measure of our humanity is not in how easily we can destroy, but in how carefully we choose when to act and when to show restraint. She ended the recording and settled into her cryopod. The systems activated, cooling her body, slowing her metabolism, preparing her for another long sleep. Her last conscious thought was a hope that the next time she woke, it would be centuries in the future, in a galaxy that had learned to solve its problems without needing a guardian. The Leviathan slipped back into dimensional storage, folding out of normal space near Neptune. To the rest of the galaxy, it simply disappeared. Sensor readings showed nothing but empty space where the massive vessel had been moments before. But everyone knew it was still there. Watching, waiting, in the Coalition Council, the mood had changed completely. Where humans had once been dismissed as primitives, they were now spoken of with respect and a healthy dose of fear. Species that had been hostile became friendly. Trade agreements were negotiated. Cultural exchanges were established. Humanity was no longer trying to join the galactic community. The galactic community was trying to stay on humanity's good side. Ambassador Kenji Torres handled the diplomatic whirlwind with grace. He accepted apologies from species that had dismissed humans. He negotiated treaties that gave humanity fair treatment without special privileges. He repeatedly emphasized that the Leviathan was defensive, not aggressive. But privately, in secure channels with Earth, he expressed concerns. The galaxy fears us now. They will smile and shake our hands, but they will also watch us constantly, looking for signs we might turn aggressive. We need to prove day by day, year by year, that we meant what we said, that we are defenders, not conquerors. On Earth, in the deep archives, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo and Colonel Marcus Webb reviewed the mission reports. The Leviathan had performed exactly as designed. The crew had acted with perfect discipline. The technology had worked flawlessly. We did it, Marcus said. We proved that humans can be trusted with ultimate power. We proved it once, Sarah corrected. We will need to keep proving it. Every time the Leviathan wakes, every time we face a crisis, we will be tested. Can we maintain our principles? Can we resist the temptation to use our power for more than defense? Do you think we can? Sarah considered the question carefully. I think we have a chance. We have 200 years of history showing restraint. We built one ship, not a fleet. We offered peace first. We showed mercy to enemies who showed us none. That's a good foundation. But, Marcus prompted, but humans are still human. Future generations might not remember why we made these choices. They might see the Leviathan as a tool for enforcing their vision of how the galaxy should be. They might convince themselves that using its power more actively is the moral thing to do. What do we do about that? We teach, Sarah said simply. We make sure every generation understands the responsibility that comes with this power. We tell the story of how we found the architect technology and chose to be guardians, not gods. We remember that power is not the same as wisdom. Across the galaxy, the story of the Leviathan spread. It became legend in its own time, a tale told in 1,000 languages by 100 species. The ship that was just a myth until it destroyed an armada. The human guardian that could kill billions but chose not to. The vessel that proved humans were more than they appeared. Some species saw it as a warning. Others saw it as hope. But everyone saw it as proof that humanity had earned its place in the galaxy. Years passed. Then decades. The Leviathan slept in its dimensional fold. its crew dreaming in cryosleep. Human colonies grew and prospered. The coalition expanded and flourished. New species joined, seeking the protection that the humans had promised. There were tensions, of course. Border disputes, trade conflicts, cultural misunderstandings. But these were resolved through diplomacy, not warfare. Everyone remembered what happened when a species chose violence over negotiation. Everyone remembered the Korthax Crimson Armada, floating helplessly in space, defeated by defenders who could have destroyed them, but chose mercy instead. The Korthax Empire itself changed. Stripped of its military pride, forced to accept that conquest was no longer possible, it turned inward. New leaders rose, ones who valued trade over tribute, diplomacy over domination. They would never admit it publicly,